In a world where injustice often silences the innocent, one woman's story proves that the truth cannot be hidden forever. Rosa, a humble maid, entered the Albuquerque mansion with nothing but her faith, her dignity, and the hope of providing a better life for her daughter. But instead of respect, she found whispers, prejudice, and humiliation. When a priceless bracelet disappeared, all eyes turned to her. Without proof, without mercy, she was accused, shamed, and nearly destroyed. But what no one knew was that the walls of that mansion carried a secret. A silent witness had seen everything, and when the truth was revealed, it left the powerful speechless and lifted the humble in victory. Stay until the end, because this story will show you that God does not abandon the innocent and that justice, though delayed, always arrives. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It was early, barely 7 in the morning, when Rosa stepped off the bus at the nearest stop to the Albuquerque mansion. She walked down the tree-lined street with steady steps, though her heart was racing. She wore a simple, neatly pressed dress and a worn-out coat that had seen better days. In her hand, she carried a small old handbag with just the essentials inside: a change of clothes, a small lunchbox of rice and beans, and her Bible, marked by years of prayers. As she walked, she looked at the enormous houses around her. Mansions that looked like palaces, so different from the small apartment she shared with her teenage daughter, Clara. Lord, let it be your will. I just want to work and give my girl a better life, Rosa whispered to herself, making the sign of the cross. When she reached the heavy iron gates of the Albuquerque estate, she paused to take a deep breath. The gates opened slowly, revealing a vast garden with blooming roses and a marble fountain in the center, a display of wealth and power that felt like another world compared to her humble life. At the door, she was greeted by Mrs. Patricia, the housekeeper, a white woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a strict posture. She looked Rosa up and down, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable but cold. "So, you're the new maid?" Patricia asked with a touch of disdain. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Rosa. I came because of the job posting." Rosa. Simple name. Well, listen carefully. This house is not a place for laziness or carelessness. Discipline is everything here. Rosa lowered her eyes respectfully and answered softly, "You can trust me, ma'am. I've been working since I was a girl. Everything I do with honesty and dedication." Patricia raised her chin, still suspicious, and gestured for Rosa to follow. As they walked through the long hallways, Rosa couldn't hide her amazement. The mansion was decorated with expensive paintings, glittering chandeliers, imported furniture. Every detail screamed of wealth and privilege. Finally, they entered the grand living room. There sat Mr. Otavio Albuquerque, the head of the family, a wealthy businessman known throughout the city. Tall, imposing, and cold, he was reading the morning paper, barely acknowledging her presence at first. "This the new one?" he asked dryly without looking up. "Yes, sir," Patricia answered. Otavio lowered the newspaper and gave Rosa a quick, dismissive glance. I've lost count of how many employees have come and gone. They all think they can fool me. I hope you're different." Rosa held her ground, though her voice trembled slightly when she said, "I just want to work, sir. I want to give my daughter a better future. You won't regret hiring me." For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Otavio gave no kindness in return, only muttered as he raised the newspaper again. "We'll see." Patricia led Rosa to the kitchen, where other maids were finishing breakfast preparations. Some glanced at Rosa, whispering quietly to one another. The stares, the murmurs. Rosa pretended not to notice, but inside she felt the sting of silent judgment. Patricia's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Here are your duties. You'll handle the cleaning of the main wing, help with meals, and serve whenever the family has guests. And let me warn you, Dr. Otavio has no patience for mistakes. One slip, and you're out. Do you understand?" Rosa nodded quietly, her faith steady in her heart. As she started organizing some dishes, a kind voice broke the silence. It was Angela, another maid, younger and gentler than the rest. She approached Rosa discreetly, almost in a whisper. "You're new here, right?" "Yes. My name is Rosa." "Welcome," Angela said softly. "If you ever need anything, you can come to me." That small gesture of kindness lit a spark of hope in Rosa's heart. But little did she know, she was already being closely watched. In that house, every step would be judged, every mistake would be used against her, and the worst was yet to come. The first days in the Albuquerque mansion were filled with tension for Rosa. She woke up before dawn, tying her hair neatly in a bun and wearing her simple uniform. She worked silently, always with humility, always with care. But in a house so full of pride and appearances, silence didn't protect her from judgment. At breakfast, Rosa served the family. The dining table was enormous, covered with silver cutlery, crystal glasses, and plates of food enough to feed 10 families like hers. Mrs. Helena Albuquerque, Otavio's wife, a woman of elegance and sharp tongue, looked at Rosa with narrowed eyes as she placed a tray of fresh bread on the table. "And this one? Where did you find her, Patricia?" Helena asked, loud enough for Rosa to hear. "She came from the agency, ma'am," Patricia replied. "Agency?" Helena's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. I just hope she knows her place. These people always try to take more than they're given." Otavio didn't respond. He kept reading his newspaper, drinking his coffee as if his wife's words were normal. Rosa lowered her gaze, feeling her chest tighten. She wanted to disappear in that moment, but instead she murmured silently, "God, give me strength. I won't let them humiliate me." After breakfast, while Rosa cleaned the silverware, the other maids whispered in the kitchen, "Did you hear? The lady doesn't like her." "Of course she doesn't. Look at her," one of them said with malice. "Black and poor. They'll never trust her." Rosa's hands trembled for a second, but she kept polishing the forks. She had learned through years of hard work that if she showed weakness, people would use it against her. Only Angela, the young maid who had welcomed her on the first day, tried to comfort her. She approached and whispered, "Don't mind them, Rosa. They're just afraid of losing their jobs. This house makes people cruel." Rosa smiled faintly, but her heart ached. That afternoon, Rosa was assigned to clean the study room. The shelves were filled with expensive books, and on the desk, she saw pictures of the Albuquerque family on trips abroad: Paris, London, Rome. She lingered on one photo. Clara, her daughter, had never even been outside their neighborhood. Suddenly, the door opened. It was Otavio's teenage son, Lucas, about 16, tall, with arrogance already stamped in his young face. He looked at Rosa as if she were invisible, or worse, as if she were an intruder. "Be careful with those books," he said sharply. "They're worth more than your life." Rosa swallowed her pride and answered softly, "Don't worry, young master. I'll take care of everything." Lucas smirked, satisfied with the power his words carried, and left. Later that night, as Rosa walked to her small room in the back of the house, she overheard Helena speaking to Patricia in the hallway. "Keep an eye on that woman. I don't trust her. People like her always end up stealing something." The words pierced Rosa's heart like a dagger. She closed her eyes, held her Bible tight against her chest, and whispered to herself, "They can accuse me. They can despise me. But God sees my heart, and He won't abandon me." Yet deep down, she knew. The prejudice in that house was not just whispers. It was a storm slowly gathering. And soon, it would fall on her with all its force. Days passed in the Albuquerque mansion, and Rosa tried her best to stay invisible. She worked silently, always the first to wake up and the last to rest. Every corner of the house carried traces of her effort: shining floors, spotless dishes, perfectly folded linens. But even her dedication couldn't silence the whispers. The prejudice lingered in every glance, in every careless comment. Rosa prayed every night in her small room, asking God for patience and strength. And then, one morning, everything changed. The family was preparing for an important dinner party. The mansion was in a frenzy. Patricia giving orders, cooks rushing in the kitchen, maids carrying trays of silverware. Rosa was polishing glasses when a sharp scream echoed through the hall. "Where is it?" Helena's voice shook the house. Everyone froze. Rosa, holding a crystal glass, looked toward the stairs. Helena appeared, her face pale, her hands trembling. "My bracelet!" she cried. "The diamond bracelet Ottavio gave me for our anniversary. It's gone." Ottavio rushed down the stairs, his expression stern. "What do you mean gone?" "I left it on my vanity last night. It was right there. And now it's missing." Patricia immediately looked around at the staff gathered in the hallway. Her eyes narrowed like a hawk hunting prey. Who was in the ladies' room? The silence was heavy. No one dared to speak. Then one of the maids whispered almost reluctantly, "Rosa was cleaning the rooms yesterday afternoon." All heads turned toward Rosa. Her hands trembled, the glass almost slipping from her fingers. "That's not true," she said quickly, her voice breaking. "I never touched the ladies' things. I only cleaned the floor and dusted the shelves." Helena's voice cut her like a whip. "Of course you'd say that. People like you always pretend to be honest, until something goes missing." Ottavio's jaw tightened. He didn't speak yet, but his eyes were locked on Rosa. Cold, suspicious. Angela stepped forward hesitantly, her voice low but firm. "Mr. Albuquerque, Mrs. Helena, maybe we should look more carefully. Sometimes things get misplaced." But Helena interrupted her immediately. "Don't defend her, Angela. That bracelet doesn't just disappear. If it's gone, it's because someone took it." The room filled with whispers. The other maids exchanged glances, some already convinced of Rosa's guilt, others too afraid to say anything. Rosa's chest heaved, her voice shaking as she spoke, tears brimming in her eyes. "I swear on my life and before God I didn't take anything. I came here to work, not to steal." But no one answered. The silence of disbelief was louder than her words. Ottavio finally spoke, his voice deep and cold. "We'll get to the bottom of this. And if I find out you're lying, Rosa, you'll regret ever stepping foot in this house." In that moment, Rosa realized the storm she feared had begun. The missing bracelet was no accident. It was the spark that would set the fire of suspicion and humiliation ablaze. And she was the one standing in the flames. The Albuquerque mansion was heavy with tension. Every corner whispered with suspicion. Every look carried accusation. For Rosa, the walls that once only held coldness now pressed on her like a cage. The missing bracelet had become the only topic of conversation. At breakfast, Helena's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "I still can't believe it. My bracelet is gone. Do you understand what that means, Ottavio? It wasn't just jewelry. It was priceless. And someone under this roof dared to take it." Ottavio lowered his cup of coffee, his jaw clenched. He turned slowly toward Rosa, who was standing with the tray in her hands, her posture straight but her eyes filled with fear. "Tell me the truth, Rosa. Did you take it?" The words fell like thunder. Everyone turned to look at her. Patricia, the maids, even Lucas, the teenage son, who smirked from his seat as if enjoying the scene. Rosa's lips trembled. Her voice came out almost broken. "No, sir. I swear before God I would never steal. I came here to work with dignity." Helena slammed her hand on the table, startling everyone. "Liar. People like you always come into rich houses with your sweet little words. You smile, you act humble, but deep down, you're thieves. You think we don't know?" The words pierced Rosa like a knife. She wanted to defend herself, to scream, to cry, but her throat tightened. Patricia stepped forward, her voice firm. "Mrs. Helena is right. I've worked here for years, and nothing was ever stolen." Then this woman arrives, and suddenly the bracelet disappears? It's too much of a coincidence. Angela, standing in the corner, tried to intervene. "Please, that's not fair. We don't know what happened yet. We should search carefully before making accusations." But Lucas interrupted, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Oh, come on, Angela. Do we really need to search? Look at her. She probably planned this from the start. Rosa's knees weakened, but she clutched the tray tighter to keep herself standing. With tears rolling down her cheeks, she spoke again. I have nothing. I own nothing but my faith and my daughter's love. I would never risk losing that for any jewel in this world. Ottavio stood up slowly, towering over her. His voice was cold, merciless. Enough. The bracelet is gone, and you were the last one seen near my wife's room. Do you know what that tells me? Rosa shook her head desperately. Please, sir, believe me. I didn't do it. God knows I'm innocent. But Ottavio's eyes were already set. Pack your things. You're finished here. And if the bracelet doesn't appear, I'll call the police. Let them deal with you. The words echoed like a sentence. The room fell silent, only the sound of Rosa's sobs filling the air. She dropped the tray onto the table and whispered, her voice breaking but filled with conviction. You can throw me out. You can humiliate me. But the truth will come out. Because God doesn't abandon the innocent. Ottavio didn't answer. He turned his back and walked away, leaving Rosa standing, broken but not defeated. At that moment, Rosa knew. She was no longer just a maid fighting for respect. She was a woman fighting for justice with nothing but her faith to keep her standing. And the world around her wanted to see her fall. Rosa passed that night in her small room, lying on the narrow bed with her Bible pressed to her chest. Her tears soaked the pillow, but even as her heart ached, her lips whispered prayers. Lord, they humiliated me in front of everyone, and they called me a thief. But you know the truth. If no one else sees me, you see me. Give me strength to endure. The mansion was quiet, but Rosa's shame echoed through every hallway. She thought about Clara, her daughter, and how she couldn't bear for her to know what had happened. Meanwhile, in the main house, the conversation continued. Helena paced the living room, her voice sharp. I want that woman gone tomorrow, Ottavio. I won't have a thief under my roof. Ottavio, sitting in his leather chair, remained silent, his eyes dark and unreadable. He didn't argue, but he didn't defend Rosa either. Only one person in the house couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Angela. That night, Angela knocked softly on Rosa's door. Rosa, are you awake? Rosa quickly wiped her tears and opened the door. Angela entered, her face full of concern. I believe you, she whispered. I know you didn't take that bracelet. Rosa's eyes filled with tears again. She grabbed Angela's hands, her voice trembling. Thank you. But why don't you say it to them? Why stay silent when they're destroying me? Angela lowered her head, ashamed. Because if I speak up, I'll lose my job. My mother depends on me. And you know in this house, once the Albuquerques decide something, no one can change it. Rosa understood. She had seen fear like that before, the fear of the poor when facing the powerful. Angela continued, her voice firmer now. But I'll help you, Rosa. I'll keep my eyes open. I'll watch. Because I know the truth always comes out, sooner or later. For the first time in days, Rosa felt a spark of hope. The next morning, however, things only got worse. Helena made sure to let everyone know her bracelet had been stolen. The gardeners, the drivers, even distant relatives who came by the mansion, all heard whispers about the dishonest maid. Rosa felt every stare burn into her skin. The humiliation was constant, unrelenting, but in the shadows, Angela was watching carefully. She noticed details others ignored. Doors left unlocked, Lucas sneaking around the hallways at night, Patricia entering Helena's room when no one else was around. One night, Angela found Rosa praying again in her room. Don't give up, Angela said softly. God hasn't abandoned you. I feel it in my heart. Something will happen. The truth will show itself. Rosa lifted her tear-streaked face, her voice filled with fragile faith. I hold on to that, Angela, because if I lose faith, I lose everything. And while Rosa prayed in silence, Angela began a silent mission of her own. She would watch, she would listen, and when the time came, she would help reveal the truth. The days that followed were some of the hardest in Rosa's life. Every step she took in that mansion was met with eyes of suspicion, whispers behind her back, and cruel glances that pierced her dignity. At meals, the maids whispered louder than before, making sure she could hear. She swore she didn't take it, but who else could it be? It's always the same story. They act innocent, and then their laughter was bitter, sharp. Rosa tried to ignore it, but each word was like a stone thrown at her spirit. One afternoon, while serving tea in the living room, Helena intentionally raised her wrist, now bare without the bracelet, and said loudly to her friends, "It's such a tragedy. You open your doors, give work to people who have nothing, and how do they repay you? By stealing from you." The women gasped, shaking their heads. Their eyes turned to Rosa, who stood silently, tray in hand, cheeks burning with shame. She wanted to shout the truth, but her voice felt trapped inside her chest. When the guests left, Helena leaned closer to her, her words like poison. "Do yourself a favor, Rosa. Leave quietly before we drag you out with the police." Rosa clenched her Bible that night harder than ever before. Her tears soaked the thin pages, but she whispered, "Lord, you are my judge. If they hate me, if they spit on me, let it be. But do not let them take away my faith." But humiliation didn't stay inside the mansion. Word spread quickly in the small town. When Rosa went to the market on her day off, she noticed the stares. Two women near the fruit stand whispered loudly, "That's her, the maid who stole from the Albuquerques. Shameless. Imagine what else she's capable of." Rosa held her basket tighter and walked away, her chest aching. That night, she returned to her small apartment where Clara was waiting. Her daughter ran to her arms, smiling. "Mama, you're home." Rosa hugged her tightly, inhaling the scent of her little girl's hair. But Clara soon noticed her mother's swollen eyes. "Mama, did they hurt you at work?" Rosa forced a smile, caressing her daughter's face. "Don't worry, my love. Mama's just tired. Everything will be okay." But when Clara fell asleep, Rosa sat by the window, looking at the night sky. Her heart ached with a question that wouldn't leave her mind. "Lord, how much longer? How much longer will I be humiliated before you lift me up?" The humiliation was crushing her, piece by piece. Yet in the depths of her soul, Rosa clung to a fragile thread of hope, the belief that God saw her tears and that someday, somehow, the truth would shine. She didn't know when, she didn't know how, but she whispered one last prayer before sleep. Justice may be delayed, but it never fails. And with that, Rosa closed her eyes, unaware that the secrets hidden within the mansion were slowly unraveling. And soon, they would turn everything upside down. The Albuquerque mansion carried an air of elegance by day, but by night, its hallways whispered with secrets. And Rosa, though humiliated, began to notice details others ignored. One evening, as she finished cleaning the dining room, she heard footsteps in the corridor. When she turned, she saw Lucas, the teenage son, slipping quickly into his mother's bedroom. His movements were hurried, almost guilty. She froze, holding the cloth in her hand. Why would he go in there at this hour? She wondered. The next morning, Rosa found the jewelry box on Helena's vanity slightly ajar, as if someone had touched it. She didn't dare speak, not after the accusations, but the image burned in her mind. Later that week, as Rosa scrubbed the floor near the study, she overheard a hushed argument between Patricia and Helena. "You're certain it's best to keep quiet?" Patricia asked. "Yes," Helena hissed. "If the story gets out, our reputation will be ruined. Better for everyone to believe it was her." Rosa's heart raced. Better for everyone? What were they hiding? But before she could listen further, Patricia noticed her presence and shut the door abruptly, glaring at her with suspicion. That night, Rosa told Angela what she had seen and heard. "Angela, something is wrong. Lucas sneaks into Helena's room, and I overheard Mrs. Helena and Patricia whispering. They're hiding something." Angela's eyes widened. You need to be careful, Rosa. If they realize you're noticing things, they'll destroy you completely. Rosa nodded, clutching her Bible tighter. I'm not looking for trouble, Angela. I just want the truth, because God knows I am innocent. Meanwhile, Helena herself grew restless. At dinner, she snapped at Ottavio. This whole thing with the bracelet has gone too far. People are starting to talk. If the police get involved, it could stain your name, Ottavio. But Ottavio only growled. Then let it be handled quietly. We don't need outsiders meddling in our affairs. Lucas, seated at the end of the table, smirked silently. His eyes sparkled with something Rosa couldn't quite read. Arrogance, or perhaps fear. That night, as Rosa walked through the dimly lit corridor toward her room, she noticed a faint red light blinking near the corner of the ceiling. At first she thought it was her imagination, but as she looked closer, she realized it was a camera, hidden behind a small decorative plant almost invisible. Rosa's heart pounded. A camera? Here? Her thoughts raced. If there were cameras in the house, then maybe, just maybe, one of them had recorded what really happened to the missing bracelet. She pressed her hand over her chest, whispering, Lord, if this is your way, let the truth come out through these walls. Rosa didn't know it yet, but the secrets of that mansion were about to unravel faster than anyone expected, and the eye of the camera had seen everything. Rosa couldn't sleep that night. The image of the blinking red light haunted her mind. A camera, hidden in the mansion, silently watching. Could it have seen what really happened? Could this be the proof God placed in my path? The next morning she walked through the house with sharper eyes, and soon she realized it wasn't just one camera. In the corner of the living room, above the grand piano, another faint red light. Near the staircase, hidden behind a vase, yet another. The house wasn't only filled with luxury, it was filled with watchful eyes. But Rosa knew she couldn't speak of it. If Helena or Patricia discovered she had noticed the cameras, they might erase everything. She needed to stay silent. And wait. That evening, Angela approached her while they were folding linens. You look different today, Rosa. What happened? Rosa hesitated, then whispered, There are cameras in this house, Angela. I've seen them. If God allowed it, maybe one of them recorded the truth. Angela's eyes widened, her hands trembling with the sheets. If that's true, then maybe you can prove your innocence. Rosa nodded, her voice soft but filled with determination. God doesn't abandon the just. He will not let this injustice last forever. Meanwhile, Helena grew increasingly anxious. She searched her jewelry box over and over, her hands trembling. Patricia tried to calm her. Relax, madam. Everyone already believes Rosa did it. There's nothing to fear. But Helena snapped, You don't understand. If anyone discovers what really happened, our reputation will be destroyed. Ottavio overheard the argument and frowned. What are you two hiding? He demanded. But Helena quickly changed the subject, smiling coldly. Nothing, darling. Just nerves. It's been a stressful week. Lucas, however, seemed amused by everything. One night, Rosa caught him alone in the hallway, smirking. Still here, Rosa? I thought my father would have thrown you out by now. Rosa met his gaze firmly. I may not have money, young master, but I have something you don't. Oh, really? And what's that? The truth. Lucas's smirk faltered for a moment. Then he turned and walked away without another word. That night, Rosa prayed in her small room, her Bible open on her lap. Lord, if those cameras hold the truth, let it come to light. Not for me alone, but so that justice may be done. What Rosa didn't know was that the breakthrough was closer than she imagined. Because in the study, behind locked doors, Ottavio himself sat at his computer, reviewing the security footage of the mansion. And as he leaned forward, his eyes widened. The camera near Helena's room had captured everything. The mansion was unusually tense that evening. Helena had organized a grand dinner with family friends, determined to show that everything in her home was under control. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, silver cutlery reflected the light, and the guests arrived in their finest clothes. But Rosa felt like a shadow moving among them, carrying trays, refilling glasses, lowering her eyes whenever someone looked her way. To them, she was already branded, a thief in disguise. As she served wine, she overheard one of the guests whisper to another, "Isn't she the maid who stole the bracelet?" Yes. And they still keep her here? Unbelievable. Rosa's heart tightened. She wanted to run, to disappear. But instead she clung to her silent prayer. God, I am in your hands. If the truth is meant to come out tonight, let it come. And then Ottavio stood. His expression was darker than usual, his jaw stiff. He tapped his glass to silence the room. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, there's something that must be addressed. My wife's diamond bracelet, as you know, went missing. We suspected theft. Accusations were made. But I reviewed the security footage. The room froze. Guests exchanged looks, the whispers died. All eyes turned toward him. Rosa's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Helena's face went pale. Patricia clutched her napkin, her fingers trembling. Lucas stared at his father with an unreadable expression. Ottavio continued, his voice steady but heavy. The cameras in this house record everything, and they revealed what truly happened. He turned to a large television screen at the far end of the room. With the press of a button, the footage appeared. Gasps filled the air as the image showed Helena's room. First, Rosa entered with her cleaning supplies. She dusted the shelves, wiped the mirror, and left, never touching the jewelry box. Then, a few hours later, the door opened again. This time, it was Lucas. The guests leaned forward, murmurs rising. Lucas, caught on camera, opened the jewelry box, took the bracelet and slipped it into his pocket before leaving quickly. The room erupted. My God, it wasn't the maid. The boy. It was him all along. Rosa stood frozen, tears flooding her eyes as the weight of humiliation began to lift. She hadn't imagined this moment would come so soon, so suddenly, in front of everyone. Helena gasped, her voice breaking. Lucas, how could you? Lucas stood, defiant at first. So what? It was just a bracelet. You never cared about me anyway. All you care about is appearances. Ottavio's face turned red with fury. He slammed his fist on the table. You humiliated this woman. You let us believe she was a thief while you, my own son, disgraced this family. The guests whispered louder, scandal spreading like wildfire. Rosa covered her mouth with her hands, overwhelmed. Angela rushed to her side, whispering, See? God didn't abandon you. The truth is here. Helena buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Patricia lowered her gaze, ashamed, and Ottavio, though furious at his son, turned slowly to Rosa. For the first time, his eyes were not cold. They were filled with something else. Guilt. The truth had finally spoken. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than all the whispers that had once condemned Rosa. The dining room of the Albuquerque mansion was silent, suffocating. The video had ended, but the image of Lucas stealing the bracelet still hung in the air like a ghost. Rosa stood frozen, tears rolling down her face. For days, weeks, she had been spat on, whispered about, humiliated. Now the truth shone for everyone to see. Angela squeezed her hand, whispering softly, The Lord is faithful, Rosa. He never abandons the innocent. Ottavio broke the silence, his voice heavy, almost trembling. Rosa, I owe you an apology. We all owe you an apology. I accused you without proof. I allowed prejudice and arrogance to blind me. And for that, I am ashamed. He lowered his head. For a man of power like Ottavio, that gesture was monumental. Helena, her face streaked with tears, walked toward Rosa slowly. She tried to speak, her voice breaking. I judged you unfairly. I let my pride and my prejudice poison my heart. Can you forgive me? Rosa held her Bible tight against her chest. Her voice was soft but filled with strength. I forgive you. because forgiveness is freedom. But remember this: what you did to me you cannot erase. You almost destroyed my dignity. Never again treat someone as less than human because of where they come from, or the color of their skin. The words struck the room like thunder. The guests lowered their heads, ashamed. Patricia wept silently, realizing her own cruelty. Lucas, however, was furious. "Why is everyone making such a big deal? It was just a bracelet." Ottavio turned to him, his voice stern. "It wasn't just a bracelet, Lucas. It was honesty. It was respect. Things you clearly know nothing about." The boy sneered, but no one supported him. For once, his arrogance met the cold wall of truth. Ottavio then addressed Rosa again. "From this day forward, you are not just my employee. You are part of this house, and you will be treated with respect." But Rosa shook her head gently. "Thank you, sir, but no. My place is not here anymore. I came to this mansion looking for work, and instead, I found humiliation. I will leave with my head held high, knowing God defended me. That is enough." The room was silent again, and then slowly the guests began to applaud. Not for Ottavio, not for Helena, but for Rosa, for her dignity, her strength, her unshakable faith. Rosa walked out of the mansion that night with Angela by her side. The night sky was full of stars, and for the first time in weeks she felt the air filling her lungs with freedom. At home, Clara ran to her arms. "Mama, you're smiling again." Rosa kissed her daughter's forehead, tears of joy streaming down. "Yes, my love, because God showed the world the truth, and justice. Justice always arrives." The camera lingered on Rosa and Clara embracing, light shining softly through the window. And a final message appeared on the screen. "Humiliation can last for a night, but justice comes with the dawn. Never lose hope. The truth always prevails."